Ready for a deep dive. This time, it's Nouvelles du Monde by Michel Serres.
Oh, interesting choice. It's hard to put in a box, isn't it?
That's putting it mildly. Part philosophy, part like a nature documentary, but with this very human touch, you know?
Definitely. Full of these stories and reflections, and they all kind of flow together, like a river, you know? Takes you to these unexpected places.
Exactly. It's like he's taking us on a journey. And we're talking shipwrecks, mountaintops, cities, it's all in there. But there's this web connecting it all. One of the things that really struck me was this idea of water, of flow.
Yeah.
And it all starts with this really strange image. A head. Yeah, but a mannequin head. Just bobbing down the Tiber River.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that. Such a weird image. It makes you think, huh?
And for Serres, it triggers all these memories, takes him back to his childhood. He grew up near the Garonne River, and he talks about these devastating floods.
Oh, right. And he uses this phrase, what was it? Quadrisecular and capricious tide?
Exactly. It's like this force that's so powerful, so ancient, almost mythical. Makes you realize we're not really in control, are we?
Not at all. And it's not just about the raw power, you know? It's also about the connection we have to the natural world.
Yeah.
Even when it's dangerous, unpredictable. Like, he tells this story about Dennis, this retired mariner.
Yeah, I remember Dennis.
Heartbroken because they built a dike to control the Garonne. And it's like a part of him is missing now, that connection to the river. Even though it was dangerous, it was a part of his life.
It makes you think about progress, you know?
Yeah.
What we gain, what we lose, that balance. But I want to jump ahead a little, if that's okay. You mentioned a story about gorillas and an engineer named Francois.
Oh, right. Francois, yeah. He's working in the rainforest in Gabon. And, let's just say he has a very memorable dinner.
Oh.
Yeah, he finds this feast laid out on a bed of leaves, a gift from the gorillas.
Wait, the gorillas made him dinner? Seriously, what's going on there?
That's what Serres wants us to think about, right? What is communication? Can we have a connection with other species, even if we don't speak the same language? Francois, through his actions, through his respect for them, he earned their trust, their understanding.
Wow. It really makes you think about every animal encounter you've ever had, doesn't it? Like, have you ever felt a connection with an animal, even without words?
Totally.
It's a powerful idea that we're all connected in ways we might not even realize. But speaking of connections, there's another story I wanted to touch on. This one's a bit more serious. It's about Terzilio, right? The mountain guide.
Ah, Terzilio. Yeah, he's an incredible figure, almost mythical the way Serres tells it. He's the skilled mountain guide, and during a war, he ends up helping soldiers from both sides.
Both sides? How?
He knows the mountains like the back of his hand, right? So he uses that knowledge to help them navigate the terrain, avoid danger.
Wow. That's incredible.
He becomes this symbol of hope, of compassion. They call him the Phantom, the soul of the Alps. It's like he transcends the whole conflict, shows us that human connection is possible, even in the most divided of times. And it's not just about what he does, it's how Serres tells the story, you know? He doesn't shy away from the complexity of it all.
Yeah, I get that. It's not always easy to know what the right thing to do is.
Right.
But it's like he's challenging us to at least ask the question, would we have the courage to do what Terzilio did? To choose compassion, even when it seems impossible?
Exactly. It's a good question. It's like, what would we do in those situations? It's tough. But anyway, you know what else Serres writes about? Something a little different. He's got this whole thing about the illusion of control, you know?
Oh, yeah. I love that part. Like, we think we've got it all figured out.
Exactly. And he tells this great story to illustrate it about these three physicists, I think it was. They decide to bring electricity to this poor rural area, you know, trying to do a good thing, right?
It was good so far.
Right. But they totally underestimate the people who live there. Like, these residents are incredibly resourceful. They find all these clever ways to tap into the power grid without paying.
No way. So what happens?
It's hilarious, actually. It becomes this whole comical debacle. The physicists are pulling their hair out, trying to maintain control, but the situation just keeps spiraling.
It's like that old saying, the best laid plans.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of unintended consequences. And, you know, it's not just about electricity or physicists, it's about life, right?
Yeah.
Things happen that we don't expect. We can plan all we want, but sometimes we just have to roll with it.
It's so true. Okay, but speaking of things we can't control, there's the story of Eve. That one really resonated with me.
Oh, Eve. Yeah, hers is a short story, but it packs a punch. She's this young woman from the countryside, and suddenly she becomes this huge sensation in Paris. Like, imagine going from total obscurity to the spotlight overnight.
It's like a fairy tale, almost. But then what happens?
And just as quickly as she rises to fame, she vanishes. Poof. Gone. No one knows what happened to her.
Wow. It's like a cautionary tale, about the fleeting nature of fame, of fortune. It makes you think about what really matters in life.
Absolutely. It's like Serres is saying, don't get caught up in the superficial stuff. Focus on what's real, what's enduring, and maybe, find beauty in the impermanence of things.
I like that. Find beauty in the impermanence. Okay, so we've talked about nature's power, about these unexpected connections we make, and the illusion of control. What other threads is Serres pulling at in this book? What else did you notice?
Well, there's this theme that runs through a lot of the stories. It's about chance. Chance encounters, unexpected turns of fate, that kind of thing.
Oh, I see that. Like even that image we started with, the mannequin head floating down the river, that's a chance encounter in a way. It sparks this whole chain of reflections, both for us as readers and for the characters in the book.
Exactly. And it's not just that one image. Throughout the book, you see these characters whose lives are completely changed by these seemingly random events, like, remember Melchior, the gem hunter?
Oh, yeah. Melchior. He was a character. Always off on some adventure. Didn't he once lose a fortune in jewels because he accidentally threw them away?
He did. Can you believe it? A whole carload of precious stones ended up in the trash. Talk about bad luck. But you know what's amazing? He just shrugged it off like it was no big deal.
He was a true free spirit, that one.
Totally. He understood that risk, chance, it's all part of the game. You can't control everything.
Speaking of things we can't control, that story about the lawyer and his friend, the one where the friend is having a mental health crisis, that one stayed with me. It felt so real, so raw.
Oh, that's a powerful one. The way Serres captures the lawyer's struggle, trying to help his friend from afar, dealing with the fear and uncertainty, it's heartbreaking, but also deeply relatable.
The way he connects it to this bigger idea, right? About the pressures of society, the anxieties we all face. Remember how the lawyer starts to see parallels between his friend's paranoia and the life of a head of state, constantly surrounded by security?
Right, like where does individual experience end and the collective anxieties of our time begin? It's blurry, It makes you think about how our internal worlds are shaped by the forces around us.
It's like Serres is always pushing us to look deeper, to consider those hidden connections between our own lives and the wider world.
Absolutely. And he does it through these amazing stories, but also through the way he tells them. It's not linear. It's more like, well, you said it before, like he's weaving a tapestry.
A tapestry of stories. I love that.
Yeah. And each thread is important. The personal anecdotes, the historical accounts, the philosophical reflections. He brings it all together.
Speaking of stories, there's one more I wanted to mention. The one about Lahontan, the explorer. He travels to North America, meets all these different Native American tribes. It's fascinating.
Oh, yeah. And it's so different from the usual stories we hear about that time period, right? Like, he actually listens to the indigenous people he encounters. He tries to understand their perspectives.
And it makes you realize how much our view of history is shaped by who's telling the story, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Lahontan's account challenges the dominant narratives, the ones that often erase or distort indigenous voices. It's like Serres is urging us to question everything we think we know about the past and to seek out multiple perspectives, always.
He's not just asking us to question the stories of others, though. He wants us to look at the stories we tell ourselves, too.
Oh, I see what you mean. About our own lives.
Yeah, like what narratives are we holding on to? What stories are shaping our perceptions, even if they no longer serve us? It's about taking ownership of our own narratives.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to do, is it? To question those deeply held stories we tell ourselves.
Definitely not. It takes courage to look at ourselves, honestly, to be willing to rewrite those narratives that might be holding us back. But that's the kind of challenge Serres throws at us. He wants us to engage with the world, with ourselves, on a deeper level.
It's like he's saying, look around. The world's full of beauty, wonder, these amazing connections, but you gotta look for them, You gotta be open to seeing things differently.
Yeah, and sometimes life kind of forces you to see things differently, doesn't it? Like when everything gets shaken up and you have to put the pieces back together in a new way.
Exactly. And that's where that whole water metaphor comes back in. Remember those sailors, the Acadian corsairs? They're trying to rescue Napoleon from exile.
Oh, right. It's like a whole adventure story right in the middle of the book.
Totally. They're sailing across the Atlantic, facing storms, fighting off British warships. It's intense.
High seas adventure. And they're doing it all for Napoleon.
Well, that's the thing. Even in the midst of all that danger, they're still able to appreciate the beauty around them. Serres talks about how they're mesmerized by the flying fish, these huge icebergs, the way the sea glows at night. It's like they're in awe of it all.
It's like they find these moments of peace, of wonder, even in the chaos.
Yes. And it's in those moments when they're fully present that they connect to something bigger than themselves. The rhythm of the ocean, the uncertainty of the journey, they surrender to it.
So it's a metaphor. The journey, the ocean, it's life, right?
Exactly. He's saying that's how life is. Constant change, unexpected currents. We can try to control things, but ultimately we're all just along for the ride.
So what's the takeaway? Learn to surf.
Something like that. Learn to navigate, to adapt, to find the beauty in the detours. And maybe when we let go of that need to control everything, we actually connect more deeply to the world.
And to ourselves, right?
Exactly. Because ultimately we're all part of that same vast ocean, connected in ways we can't even comprehend.
It's kind of humbling, don't you think? But also empowering.
Totally. It's like our stories, as individual as they seem, are all part of this larger narrative. We're all threads in this incredible tapestry, each one of us adding our own unique color, our own texture.
And it's the connections, the intersections that make the tapestry so beautiful. Serres leaves us with a sense of wonder at the complexity of it all. He wants us to see those connections in our own lives, in the world around us, to appreciate the stories that bring us together. It's a beautiful way to look at the world, don't you think? With curiosity, with openness, pay attention to the threads, embrace the unexpected, and find the meaning in those connections. That's what we build the mold's all about.